In this episode of the Beer Necessities, we take the 3-hour ferry from North Wales over to the capital of the Republic of Ireland, Dublin. And predictably, I'm here to visit the St James Gate Brewery, which has been home to Guinness since 1759. I need to try Guinness at source though. Whilst we're here, I will check out a couple of other old-timers too.
I took a 3-hour ferry across the Irish Channel to arrive here in Dublin and to visit the St James's Gate Brewery. And it was here in 1759 that Arthur Guinness started brewing beer, and 265 years later, they're still making Guinness here. And we're going to go and have a bit of a tour of this place at the Guinness Storehouse. So I've been to Dublin a few times, and I've never actually made it into the Guinness Brewery before, but first time for everything. 1759 though. Now in the early days they were just making ale. Then about 20 years later they started making porter, and over time that's when they started making a bit more full-bodied and a bit more character in their beer, and it evolved into what's now known as stout. And then, you know, Guinness today is an iconic drink across the world, and it's known for that thick, creamy, viscous head on it, which was only introduced in 1959 when they introduced nitrogen into the process. About 70% nitrogen, 30% carbon dioxide. Anyway, boring stuff. But Guinness make other drinks as well these days here on this site. So they make Nitro IPA, Hop House 13. There's a range of different Guinness products, and also, do you remember from back in the day, Harp? I'm in a very wet and miserable Dundalk, about 50 miles north of Dublin on Ireland's east coast, and I'm actually stood outside what is now the Great Northern Distillery. But this didn't used to be a distillery. From 1896 to 2013, nice one, to 1896 to 2013, this was actually the Great Northern Brewery. Now, in the early days, used to brew ales, moving on to porters and stouts. And then in the 1950s, it was bought out by the Smithick Brewery of Kilkenny, but then in the late 50s, Guinness took this place on. But they immediately repurposed its brewing. Guinness were cognizant of the fact that lager was becoming increasingly fashionable, and it was a market that they were desperate to tap into. So they decided that this was going to be a brewery for making lager. So they enlisted the services of a German brewmaster called Hermann Münder from Cologne. He's at the Dom Brewery, which is still going. The Dom Brewery is still going. And he came over here to live and help them transform this brewery into a place that could make German-style Pilsner. And in 1960, that's what they did. Now, before that, Münder was really impressed with the water that they used at this brewery, because it comes from a local mountain, soft water, so we thought it was ideal for Pilsner. It is really horrible here. Ideal for Pilsner, and given his history in brewing German Pilsner and Kolsch, he knew that it would be ideal. And actually, what he did was he was sending he sent some samples of the water to the laboratories over at the Weihenstephan Brewery over in Bavaria, which we recently did an episode on. As you know, it's a university and a technical centre for brewing, and they were trying out different yeasts there. And Münder went over and tried out some of the samples that they'd made, and decided on the yeast that they were going to use to make this particular Pilsner, this particular lager. And it was the birth of Harp. So Guinness were behind Harp, and Harp still exists today. You just don't tend to see it. I think you can only get it in Dundalk and maybe a little bit further up the coast and into sort of Belfast actually. I'm going to cross the road. It's very busy. I'm probably going to get killed. So yeah, it was the beginning of Harp. get yourself a cool, sharp Harp. Now, obviously, Harp, the name of the beer, but obviously, you know, Guinness, the emblem of Guinness is a Harp as well. That's where all that comes from. Now, yeah, I haven't seen Harp in a long time in the UK, but it did become massive. I mean, this brewery here was the second biggest in Ireland, behind the St James's Gate Brewery in Dublin, where Guinness itself is made. I'm never going to get across this road. But Harp, yeah, it's kind of died a death, really. Now, I think a lot of that is because, although it started out with the best intentions of trying to conform to Reinheitsgebot and German brewing standards, I think they started to tinker with it down the years, tried different additions, cut some corners, tried funky things, and it kind of lost its quality and its kudos a bit. I remember, you know, in the 90s it being quite popular in some of the pubs where I live in Wales. Anyway, I used to work in a bar, and we used to sell Harp and Kilkenny, actually, you know, around the same sort of time. But anyway, this is a massive complex, and here's the Harps on the gate. Now, although this is repurposed now, you can sort of see over there those massive kettles. You know, it is a distillery now, but it is huge here, absolutely huge. So yes, Guinness, Harp. Might see if you can get a pint of Harp while I'm here, because it's been 25 years plus since I've tasted that. Let's have a look.
And as luck would have it, opposite the old brewery is Kennedy's Bar.
Well, there you go. First place we went in, and they definitely had it. Cool, sharp Harp. The thing is, does it still have any resemblance to a German-style Pilsner? No. Very soft, but a very generic lager, very generic sort of Pilsner style. Smooth, mildly hoppy, very mildly hoppy. A little bit of honeyness, but yeah. I think I can see why this thing has died a bit of a death. But anyhow, on to the next one. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go and have a look around the brewery.
You can book yourself on a tour of the Guinness Storehouse online. It appears to be immensely popular. We came early in the morning on a Monday, and there was a large queue. So this is a major tourist attraction here in Dublin. So the journey begins here. And it's immediately apparent that this is a massive budget production, the most expensively put together brewery tour I've ever personally been on. And they educate you on how you need barley, water, hops, and of course you need yeast to make Guinness. But that's pretty much how you make most beers, right? So yes, those four ingredients make Guinness unique, but they're the exact same four ingredients that you need for pretty much every other beer you've ever had or will ever have. And if you really want to know more about how Guinness itself is unique, what it is about that brewing process that makes Guinness what it is, I'm not sure you're going to get it from this tour. But we are treated to simulated barley, and you know, barley malts. You can't make a good beer without that, can you? Now, water. we are enlightened to the fact that water is a key component of beer. Shock horror. And we are shown what water looks like, but we are actually shown in a rather spectacular way, with water being made into words and Guinness pints, and it's quite spectacular really, but it is water. Now, of course, hops. Hops are a major part of beer, and Guinness in particular. Gives it some of the flavourings and the aromas. Hops are a massive part of the preservative element of beer as well. Now, we are reminded of some of the history of Guinness throughout the tour, and those are the interesting elements, without a shadow of a doubt. I don't know who this woman is. Probably should do, maybe, don't know, but they keep putting her face absolutely everywhere as they tell us a little bit about the history and evolution of Guinness. Then we get onto the yeast and the fact that they store their yeast in liquid nitrogen. Now, nitrogen is an important part of Guinness for other reasons, but they store their yeast in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius. And we are given visuals as to how yeast looks. So, yes, it is informative, but if you show an interest in beer and brewing already, you're not going to learn anything new here. But I would imagine for the majority of people that come on the Guinness tour, this is interesting stuff, because this is how you make beer, not specifically how you make Guinness. But we obviously saw a minute ago the barley, and they mill their own barley and they roast their own barley. So not a lot of breweries do that these days, to be fair. So they still do that. They mill it. And they roast their own barleys, and that's what's used in the mashing process. That's how they get some of the flavour profiles. And their barley and how they roast it is how Guinness gets its chocolatey taste and its dark colour. Now, anyway, we'll come back to that in a second. Nitrogen. So this is the bit, isn't it? Nitrogen. That's the bit that was introduced just over half a century ago, and that's what gives it that such a unique bubble sensation, and they treat us to what bubbles look like as well. Then we get onto the Guinness Hall of Fame, and there is Arthur Guinness himself, the original. So this gets a bit more interesting. It's less about the very generic process of brewing beer and the historical figures of Guinness and its brewery that have brought it on its journey to where it is today. Well, we do get back to the barley, the malts, and to be fair to Guinness, there's not many places these days that do roast their own barley malts and mill it themselves. And they do roast it at 232 degrees Celsius, which is what makes it so dark and gives it that sort of chocolatey coffee colour. But the bit I enjoyed the most was the history of Guinness's advertising campaigns. They've had really powerful advertising campaigns. TV in the 90s, you probably remember a lot of it, and they used to tell women many years ago that Guinness was good for you if you were pregnant.
So you get a bit of a tasting room, and again, just a repeat of what goes into these drinks, into Guinness and pretty much every other beer you'll drink. Hops. Malt. Guinness. Yeah.
If you are a Guinness lover though, there is a massive Guinness store here selling all kinds of Guinness merchandise and paraphernalia. It's actually on the bottom floor. The way the tour works is that you work your way from the bottom floor all the way to the top floor, and that's where you end up having a pint of Guinness. And that is where we land now, on the top floor, overlooking Dublin, a pint of Guinness.
Well, we have reached the top of the Guinness Storehouse tour. This is the Infinity Bar where you get a view of Dublin, and you finish off with a nice cold pint of Guinness. And what I like about Guinness is you get that sort of Mercury's in retrograde effect from, obviously it's got nitrogen as well as carbon dioxide in it, so it looks like the bubbles are falling on the outside of the glass, but actually they're rising on the inside. I'm not a big fan of Guinness. I think it's extremely forgettable, just like this tour, extremely forgettable. It looks like it's maybe the biggest tourist attraction in Dublin. The queue outside at 10 o'clock this morning was mental. Well, not mental, but it was busy. And it just takes you through the generic brewing process, like 100 different tours I've been on before. Hops, yeast, barley, water, there's no insight. You don't get to see any of the brewing here. So it's a brewery tour, you don't get to see the brewery. It's a very expensively put together museum, effectively, tour. Really expensive, really well done, to be fair, best I've seen by a country mile. But it's just the same old. And it is in a converted part of the old brewery, but look, you know, this is historic stuff. You know, Guinness, is there any more famous beer in the world than Guinness? I don't think so. You know, 265 years this brewery's been going here in the centre of Dublin, the St James Gate Brewery. 265 years. I mean, that is. But Guinness, in its current form, hasn't been going that long. You know, obviously they started off with most breweries in Ireland everywhere, ales, then on to porters, and then they went for the sort of the thicker-bodied, heavier, slightly richer stouts. And then it wasn't until 1959 that some wise guy said, let's start putting nitrogen in there, and that gives you that thick, creamy texture. And that's the unique selling point of Guinness, is that texture. You know, people often say that it's like having a meal, and it is, but it's not. It's not more fattening or calorific than any other beer. Probably less so, actually. It just feels like it because of the effect that the nitrogen has now. It diminishes fairly quickly. You've got to drink a Guinness pretty quickly, otherwise that head and everything goes, and it just turns into what I consider to be just a very sort of thin porter. But it's part of what makes it such an immensely successful and popular drink. But if you come into Dublin and you're just a tourist who's got interest in learning new stuff, then come to this tour. I think it was £20 an adult, £10 a child, and you get a pint for that. But if you're a beer enthusiast, you know, looking to get greater insight into how they make their beer here, or even get to see some of it firsthand, save your money, waste of time. Yeah, but yeah, Guinness, I mean, 265 years, man. And it was back in the 1950s, I think the Guinness Book of Records was created. I knew this anyway, but the MD of Guinness at the time, I think he was at some sort of clay pigeon shooting party or something similar, and he was having an argument with somebody about what the fastest game bird was. And that came up with this bright idea that really all this should be written down somewhere, so save having a debate about it, you could reference something. And then the Guinness Book of Records was born. Really, if he had a bit of foresight, or more foresight, he should have just invented the internet. But anyhow, no point in describing Guinness too much, because I'm sure everybody's had a pint in the day. They always say it's better than Ireland than it is everywhere else. That's not a theory I've ever subscribed to. Yeah, it tastes the same as it does in my local Legion. But yeah, don't get me wrong, that thick creaminess to it, that's what makes it pleasant. But yeah, it's toasty, dark chocolatey, but it's a little, for me, you see, Guinness is just too it's not full-bodied enough. It's too thin. It's almost a bit watery to me, Guinness. Each to their own. Oh, look, I'm in the minority, right? Because it's a hugely popular drink. You know, it's got decent amount of bitterness to it. It's, you know, it's hoppy. It's you know, it's sharp, but yeah, it's just such a forgettable drink for me. And again, so is the tour. So anyhow, I probably will have another one down in Temple Bar later because I am a tourist today and I'm going to do tourist stuff. But until then, well, as I'm in Dublin, might as well come to the big tourist trap, which is Temple Bar, and maybe to the Temple Bar itself. This is where everybody comes on the Raz, all the tourists and whatnot. Not just this pub, but the whole area is called Temple Bar. There's lots of little Irish pubs, whiskey bars and things like that, live music playing. So while we're here, go and have a quickie. Well, it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday in the Temple Bar region. So the pub's called the Temple Bar, but it's in the Temple Bar region of Dublin, and it is rammed in here. It's rammed in here, and it's completely Christmas decorated as well, even though it's October, late October, albeit. Yeah, so I mean that tells you what you're dealing with. Temple Bar as an area is extremely touristy. I don't think it's massive for locals. It kind of fools you into thinking that this is what old Ireland was really like, old Dublin was really like. But I think Temple Bar was sort of redesigned into being this kind of oldie Irish drinking hub, maybe in like the 1980s or something like that. Don't hold me to that. I've not researched it, but it's quite recent. But it's packed here, so it's good fun. Live all the bars around here. There's live music on all day, even in the week, which is cool. And yeah, just everybody's having a nice time. Probably playing over the odds a little bit for a beer. I'm on the Smithwick's Red Ale. It's all right. Quite thin-bodied. Gentle hotness, you know, a slight of a bitter aftertaste on it. A little bit malty, a little bit nail polishy actually. It's okay. But anyway, I've been coming in here to review a Smithwick's Red Ale. But they are selling all the classics. I've got my glasses on, but over there they've got Kilkenny. I can see that they've got Harp on tap, Murphy's, you know, things that I've not really seen in the UK pubs for quite a while actually. Yeah, I really haven't got my glasses on. Guinness, of course. But yeah, I mean, look, big tourist area, good fun in here, and when in Rome or in Dublin, do what the Dubliners don't do, and that's come here to Temple Bar and have a drink or two. So yeah, thought it'd be worth popping in here whilst we're in Dublin, and we'll be heading back tomorrow morning on the ferry across back to Holyhead, and then short journey back to Colwyn Bay where we're from, and then plan the next trip out. So in the meantime, I think as they pronounce it, cheers here, not Prost or Yechedal as we say in Wales, it's Slánsi. Well, we're leaving Dublin behind, and it's been a brief trip, and might seem fairly underwhelming as well. Don't know, but you know, we got to visit the Guinness Brewery without really seeing the brewery. But yeah, it's always nice to visit Ireland. Look, it's a beautiful day. It's October, late October. Pleasant day to sail back to Holyhead. But yeah, I mean, over there actually, you can maybe see the Wicklow Mountains. The Wicklow Mountains is where Guinness sources its water from these days. So there you go. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll be doing some more episodes soon. I'm hoping in December, might take a trip over to Cologne, do some of the cruise houses there. We'll see. So stay tuned, maybe subscribe, and bore you with some more episodes. Cheers.